You sit down to do something simple, a message, a task, something you've done before, and nothing moves. Your body feels heavy, your mind feels busy. You tell yourself you're procrastinating again. But quietly, another question lingers. Why does starting feel harder than it should, even when you care? From the outside, your life might look fine. You show up, you respond, you function. But inside, there's a constant internal dialogue. Did I say that right? Did I explain myself enough? Was that too much or not enough? You replay conversations long after they're over. You adjust your tone before anyone reacts. You think 3 steps ahead emotionally. And by the time you're alone, you're empty. Not sad, not depressed, just depleted. So when it's time to focus or create or decide, your system stalls. You scroll, you delay, you feel guilty for resting, but too tired to act. This doesn't just affect productivity, it shapes identity. You start seeing yourself as unreliable, undisciplined, lazy, and that label quietly follows you into relationships, into work, into the way you talk to yourself. But here's the subtle truth most people miss. What looks like laziness is often the residue of emotional overmanagement. You didn't become this way randomly. At some point, your nervous system learned that being emotionally alert was necessary. Maybe you grew up around unpredictability. Maybe approval felt conditional. Maybe being misunderstood had consequences. So you adapted. You learned to anticipate, to regulate yourself before anyone else had to smooth emotional edges before they caused friction. This is not a flaw, it's a survival strategy. The problem is that strategies built for emotional safety often come at the cost of internal energy. And over time, that cost shows up as exhaustion mistaken for laziness. To understand what's happening, you have to understand how the brain allocates energy. Your brain operates in different modes. One is focused on tasks, the other is focused on social and emotional monitoring. When you're emotionally overmanaged, that monitoring system stays on, even when no one else is around. It's like leaving dozens of browser tabs open in the background. Each one doesn't seem heavy on its own, but together they drain processing power. Neuroscience shows that self-monitoring and emotional regulation use the same brain resources needed for focus, planning, and starting. So when you've spent the day managing tone, reactions, impressions, there's less capacity left to begin anything for yourself. Here's a simple way to see it. Imagine your attention as a battery. Emotional overmanagement isn't one big drain, it's a constant low-level leak. You don't notice it happening, you just notice that when it's time to act, there isn't enough charge left. And this is where the confusion sets in. Because from the outside, nothing dramatic happened. No crisis, no breakdown, just quiet depletion. This isn't about pushing harder or forcing discipline. It's about noticing where your energy is already going. When you feel lazy, pause for a moment and ask yourself what emotional work you're already doing. Often, you're not avoiding the task, you're still processing something else, a conversation, a reaction, an unspoken tension. When you name that, something shifts. The brain doesn't have to hold it silently anymore. Another shift happens when you stop using energy levels as evidence of character. Low energy doesn't mean low worth. When you judge yourself for not starting, your brain reads that judgment as threat, and threat shuts down initiation. But when you say quietly, "My system isn't resourced right now," resistance softens. Not as an excuse, as an observation. Starting becomes easier when starting doesn't feel like a performance. Instead of working on the project, you open the file. Nothing more. The brain resists beginnings that imply evaluation. It relaxes when the entry point feels neutral.
Another invisible drain comes from imagined audiences, the way you picture how your actions might be seen, judged, interpreted, even when you're alone. That imagined evaluation activates the same stress pathways as real scrutiny. When you remove the audience, autonomy returns. You stop asking how it will be received and start noticing whether it feels clear to you. And finally, there's rest that actually restores. Not rest that improves you, not rest that teaches you something. Just time where nothing is processed, nothing optimized, nothing managed. A walk without insight, music without meaning, silence without explanation. Here is where the nervous system resets. Here's the model to remember. You are not unmotivated, you are over-allocated. Your energy hasn't disappeared, it's just been assigned to tasks no one sees. Once you see that, the inner narrative changes. You stop fighting yourself, and the system slowly recalibrates. Not through force, but through permission. One day, you notice something subtle. Starting doesn't feel heroic, it feels neutral. You don't feel energized, you just feel available. And that's when it becomes clear. Laziness was never the problem. Silence was. Not external silence, but the absence of space where you didn't have to manage yourself. And maybe for the first time in a while, you let yourself sit there. Not fixing, not optimizing, just being unobserved.